How's it going, everybody? In today's video, I just wanted to go over, it's not really the basics or anything like that. Really, I just want to show people, because I get a lot of this, and I do have other videos of this, but some people have trouble going back looking at all the old videos. But just going through my workflow, briefly, of starting comic pages. After you've got your thumbnails done, all the pre-work that goes into making comics, once you get down to actually start doing your tight pencils and or your inks. And in this case, since I work digitally, it's going to be a little mixture of both, mostly inks. So the first thing I do is I open up a Manga Studio. This is 4EX here. I plan on doing one of these for 5 because it seems like a lot more people got into Manga Studio with 5. And I'm not sure quite why that is, but that's still cool. So what I'll do is I'll open up a new file in Manga Studio, the number of pages for the comic, and then what I'll do is I will take my thumbnails, and in this case I had done these with a pencil on like real life paper, scan them all into one document in Photoshop, or I suppose you could definitely do this in Manga Studio, and just cut up each picture and then paste it in each page. And that's honestly the most time-consuming part of this whole thing. Page 22 is the page I'm actually going to be working on right now. So I figured, what the hell, let's do this video. I wanted to quickly note as well that the thumbnails that you're bringing in, it's okay to have them, you know, be really loose. You can tighten them up later. It's not going to be a huge deal. So let me just click on that. We're going to go inside of it, and this is usually how it looks. So if you zoom in, you know, these were pretty small. They're pretty rough. They've got like some rough understanding where the light source should or might be, and you can kind of see where my panels were going and all that fun stuff. So once I have that, that'll be my first layer over here, and then I start making a bunch of layers. The first layer I call, or sorry, folder. I make a bunch of folders. First one I call rough. The next one, I start making folders for the panels themselves. So I just call them P for panel 1, panel 2, and so forth. I can quickly look at the thumbnail. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And since it's digital, I mean, every stage is editable. Sounds weird, editable, and then edible, get dangerously close. But since if I wanted to add a panel in this, if I think my thumbnails weren't correct, or if I wanted to remove one, or maybe I had misread the script, all that fun stuff. So I have all that. Let me just select all them, just put it above the roughs. And I'm just going to highlight the first two when you open up Manga Studio, it always gives you these two files, or layers, sorry, I apologize. One's like a sketch layer, like your blue line, and one's like your normal layer. I just paste in the image like you saw for my thumbnail, move on to the next page, and do that a whole bunch of times. So I just shift-click all that, move it into the rough, because that's where I'm going to be doing all my pencil work and all that fun stuff. Okay, so we're going to have that. Next thing I do is I just click on the thumbnail and Control-T to transform it. Now, in Manga Studio 4, anyway, this is usually clicked on, keep aspect ratio, and that's really cool if the panel or the page you're working on, the thumbnails, they're like precise size. As you can see, mine aren't. So I like to turn that off. I'm not necessarily, like, I'm only making small adjustments here to fit within the print guide or the live area. So, you know, stretching and pulling isn't that big of a deal because we are going to add roughs over top of this. I wouldn't go drastic, like if you're stretching your page out this way because you did your thumbnails wrong, or most people probably stretch it this way. This is where it can start getting into a problem because it's too long and people's faces start getting squashed and stretched, and it's really noticeable there. So I'll just finalize that, click OK. When I do thumbnails like this, personally, I don't like thinking necessarily right away of panels that'll break away, having panels drastically different. I like to keep it all condensed and crunchy. I like to think of it where it's all just bite size right there. It's all in there. Then now I can worry about really popping things over certain things. So you guys may not be able to see this. I can tell because they're my own thumbnails. I can see what I was trying to do here. If you look at, let me just put a layer above here so I can draw over and you guys can see what I'm talking about. Right here, there's this black area that I've shaded in, and that's just to help frame this panel right here. Okay. These two panels, panel 1 and 2, are actually overlapping here. You can see how this works. Now, the reason I did this is my thought was panel 3 here was going to be more of an open panel. These two panels were just going to float over top of it, meaning that panel 3 is more of like all of this. It's the background image. So that's why you've got this black right here that's framing it, and there's a lot of black happening in these panels. So I'm seeing what's going on here. I'm trying to understand where I would like to go with this. So the next step I'll do is I'll just go over here and make a new layer and change the layer type to panel ruler. Click OK. Now you'll notice, where is, let me just see. I think mine's turned off, but sometimes people like to keep this on. It might be under properties. I just want to see. Properties, is it this one? Panel ruler? That's it. Okay, I know Manga Studio 5 is a little different, but this is the properties panel. And once whatever layer you're clicked on, you're going to get different properties. Okay, so here you can actually change your presets. Like what? Maybe I want this blue line that I'm seeing. Maybe I want it like a green or something. You can change it all in here. That's not what I care about. This is the first one that was a little bit of a problem for me. Trying to figure out your gutters, which is the space in between individual panels. How far should they be? And the panel borders themselves, how thick should they be? These are all questions I think most of us have at some point. The big recommendation that I can do, and I highly recommend everybody do this if you're still kind of confused or you just don't feel like it's maybe your panels are too thick or something. Grab your favorite comic book. You're going to like it for a couple reasons, not just the artist, but when you look at their page, like the panels are awesome. They're like they're the perfect size to you. The gutter space in between, that's perfect for you. You can even go in here and change certain things, like if you want horizontal bars right here to be like a bigger, fatter gutter, as opposed to the horizontal ones. Or, you know, the vertical and the horizontal can be different. Manga does this a lot. So since it is Manga Studio, that setting is in there. But I just wanted to bring this up for those of you that might be confused about all that. So it's in your properties, line width. That's what you want to change, and you can go in and do all that fun stuff. The next thing I do is, even though I'm going to break this up, you guys are going to see that. Right here, there's panel ruler cutter. And this is the thing that sells Manga Studio for a lot of people. Now I can start, because you can see this blue. Let me just turn my thumbnail layer down a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. But you see that blue, it's mapping it right to the live area. And once you select your panel ruler cutter tool, when you start moving it around, it'll actually start doing the cuts, and it's very simple and very easy. So like these last two, I'll start here. It's straight, so I'm still clicking down. I'll hold shift and it'll automatically straighten it out. Boom, there you go. You got two panels here. If we zoom in here just so I can show you, I kind of curved it. I don't necessarily know why. I think I was trying to do something a little bit more dynamic with the last panel. Now that I'm looking at it, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to break them up. And here I'm going to break this panel. Now this work gets interesting, because like I had previously said, I want this panel to be this whole upper half. And then as you can see, these two, they're pretty crazy. So think of it just like drawing, down to the fundamental basics, and you can always change it. So even though these are tilted, they're still squares, right? So I'm just going to hit shift, make the squares, and we're going to do another one here. That's cool. Now the next step, this is where the fun part comes in for me, is you just click the object selector tool. Now we can get in there and we can start playing around. So what I like to do is I'm actually going to shift select this whole panel and delete supposed to work. Delete selected points. Will that work? There you go. So now it's open. What's going to happen here, you're going to see very shortly, once I rasterize this, it's when you rasterize it, that basically means it's going to create those black lines for your panels and gutters. But it automatically makes gutters white, which is really awesome. But in this situation, it's going to suck, because I want it open. I don't want a panel there. You're going to see how I get around that. It's very simple. Now I want these guys to be a little bit more angled, just to add a little bit of some visual flair to it. So I'm really just eyeballing it here. Just trying to have a little fun with these panels here. The last couple pages here have been a little intense. There's been a giant fight. There's probably been some nasty things that went down. Somebody probably got really hurt. That kind of stuff. Let me just see if I can bring this up here. So that's looking a little bit closer to what I had. As you can see, it's still, I didn't draw all of the superhero's face here, but we're going to do that. I want it a little bit bigger than the other one, just so you can get that dynamic close-up. And it's still giving us a lot of cool things. One thing to be leery of is your live area, okay? So really quickly, your live area, which automatically is selected from your presets of the page that you set up, that's the area that will always get printed no matter what. The next thing you're going to have is your bleed. Is it bleed or is it trim? Trim, I believe, is the next one. I always get them backwards. But your first line here is your trim and your bleed. No, that's wrong. See, I got it backwards. Bleed. So this first line is your bleed. That's where the art can bleed over. The second line is the trim. That's danger zone. That's where the blade's supposed to cut. The reason why there's a gap there is because when pages get cut at the printer, they're better now, but there was a time, and still today, where it's still a little off, where you can get like weird slices and stuff. So anything you guaranteed has to be on the page no matter what, always stay in the live area. This first line is, to me, the maximum. Don't ever go past that, because there is a risk that it'll get cut. That'll be the line where it gets cut. So where I'm going with that is, if you scroll up, this is the line here. I don't want that cut at all, right? I don't want that panel. That would look really weird if the page just got cut and the panel fell off. So as I can see, I'm getting dangerously close, if not already passing it. I'm just going to bring it in again. Just try to keep that weird shape that I have for the panel, and we should be good. So now you can just right click on here, let me just show you here in case you guys, panel ruler layer, that one that we had already made. Right click on it and rasterize layer. It's going to ask you, do you want to keep the original? I like to say yes. You never know if you ever need something again. It doesn't notice. I don't notice anything like a drop in performance for having this. So yes, I'll keep the original layer, and it's going to default just make the panel ruler layer. I like to put it above everything. Because the way I look at it, everything else in this page fits inside of those panels. Okay, so as you can see, now we're missing all of this guy, which is a bum out. There's a couple things you can do. I've seen some people. You can just click the magic wand tool, and it'll actually select all of the white and click delete. That's what I usually do because it's the fastest. You're not going to pick up anything. Make sure you got browse multiple layers on, all that fun stuff. Another way you can do it is if you go up to the lasso selection and you select the polyline and you start making straight lines. That way you can cut maybe just the top, like I had suggested that might be something that you'd want to do. But since I already have it, now I can just hit clear, and there you go. And that's one way of doing it. And now I know the only downside now is, let's say I'm going in here to make my line art. I'm drawing in here, yeah, this is sweet, and I'm starting to do the hair, and we're going in there, and look, the lines are going over, as opposed to the way that it would work before. All this would be white, and it would just automatically kill it, and you wouldn't see it, which is awesome. The last step that I would do is, now that I have all this, I would go in my rough layer. I like to work with the brush pen, just for roughs. I don't know what it is. It's got a really cool texture to it. Like, let's say we were doing this guy, and it can get real thick if I want it to. It helps with shading and stuff like that. The whole idea for me is to keep things big and bulky so that I can't, as you can see, I'm zoomed to 25%. If I go into 100% and, I shrink this brush right down to like what I would normally ink with, now I can get in here and I feel like now I'm getting details, That's taking too much time. Get a nice big brush that you kind of hate, because the more comfortable you get with a tool, the more time you can spend with it, I find. I'm just going to save real quick here. So we'll just do this guy real quick, just so you guys can see essentially what I would do in this panel. So I have the gesture down that I was thinking of, and I'm just going to tighten up that anatomy. Now, the tighter your thumbnails helps this stage big time. But I'm a big fan of leaving a lot of this stuff for guesswork up until the point of this stage right here, because a lot of the guesswork means that you're not being tight and precious with your anatomy and stuff, which means, for me anyway, I find that I get a lot of energy out of my poses that way. I don't need to worry necessarily right away about keeping some cool, having everything work. I can worry about making it cool. I just had a little bit backwards there of how I was going to say that. So again, I'm just breaking up those shapes and trying to get more anatomically correct. I'm definitely going to go over this again. This isn't the final anatomy here. So I'll have things like this that are still weird, like it looks like his shoulder's sagging a bit there. And digital's awesome, right? So we can just, oops, I'll move that back over there. And I'm just going to move it up like that. Very quick adjustments. A lot of people I've seen too, they'll do all this stuff here, and we'll go into like a tight anatomy stage. And then they just print it out on like paper, change the line to blue. And then start doing pencils over top. I think that's a really cool workflow. I highly recommend checking that out. Even if you don't have, you know, like a light box, sometimes people use too. You can always use a window. I have a video on that you guys can check out. I'm still not sold on certain things of this right here. Like his head is most likely a little too small. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make another layer real quick. I'm going to change it to blue. And you can faintly see in my roughs, is the whole layer dark or is it just this one? Let me just bring it back up. You can see these gray perspective lines that I have in there. That is what I was thinking of while I was doing the gesture, the initial thumbnail. So I just want to kind of redraw them in a little bit. Again, just you can see the stages hopefully that I'm going through here. The first stage is just to keep it loosey-goosey, you know, get all that energy in there that you can. Have an idea of where your perspective is so that you can help with your storytelling and your placement of characters and all that fun stuff. And the second one is starting to tighten it up as we go. You know, now we're slowly building on the scribble. We're starting to get to like a tight finished thing here. So we've got a perspective here that's pretty crazy. Way up at the top here, we've definitely got a vanishing point. So I'm just going to connect some lines here. All right, so that's a vanishing point there. Real quick trick that I like to do with this kind of stuff is that's your up and down. Especially if it's something that wild. Just the opposite side. Think of it like a 2-point perspective. Think of it like this. This is how most people learn perspective, right? You'll draw that box. Even though it's up and down, it's still 2-point perspective. I'll just draw some faint lines, kind of like pulling down like that. Let's rotate it back just so I can see my placement and stuff. Yeah, it still works. So here we'll just start throwing in some lines. And a 90-degree angle from our plumb line, that line that goes up and down. 90 degrees, this will be our horizontal line. So it's still a 2-point perspective, even though it looks a little bit more pizzazz. Next thing I'll do too as well, and I should note, most of the stuff is done in an orderly fashion. This probably seems really haphazard, like it's all over the place. Let's change it to a green just for now. What I like to do as well, let me just turn that off, is this is the panel size we got here that we're working with. This is our live area. I'm trying to get into, and you guys have heard me talk about composition. So there's a little something called the rule of thirds. Sometimes I'll look on Google for a quick 3x3 grid, just paste it in here. It's easier than just eyeballing it like I'm doing right now. Like these look much different than this, just size-wise, but the idea with this, the rule of thirds, is any of these intersections, that's where you want the focal point to be. In this case, it's two characters talking, which means you're going to default to looking at a person's face. Okay, so I need to move this guy into one of those two squares, or one of those 4 intersections. The other kind of composition is you don't worry about this grid here, and what you do, whoops, let me just make another layer. Layers, layers, layers. What you would do is have a focal point like his face, and it's kind of like a 1-point perspective. Everything else goes there. So what does that mean? How would I put everything in there? Well, a couple things right away is the character over here. Obviously, she's going to look at him, but she has hair, so maybe we can get the hair kind of. See how it's pointing at him that way? We've got some rubble in the background, so I do this all the time. I'll start having like broken up pieces everywhere, but as you can see, it's all still pointing at him. You don't have to do that with everything, just the majority of stuff. And the reason for that is it makes you guys, since you're watching me do it, it makes your eye guided easier. It also helps any viewer or reader that you're going to have. It helps keeps things in focus. It lets people not have to go, okay, what the F is going on? Some cases for that though is like, let's say you're having a crazy fight scene. There is something about having clarity in a fight. You don't want to mess it up. However, if it's like a big prison brawl where it's just where's Waldo and everybody's dying, there is something to that as well, where it's you are in the chaos. This is the power and one of the most awesome things about doing comics, in my opinion, is that you are the director in a lot of ways, and you get to choose the feeling that you give the viewer. Right? That's if not the most important thing to me about comics. Is I know I get a lot of comments and questions. I've had them too about style. Where do you get style? Where's the cool fun stuff? Worry about storytelling and the rest will happen. Keep doing your studies for anatomy, looking at your artists that you love, copying their stuff, getting that. But storytelling, composition, flow, those are all way more important. Even if you look at somebody that's just a pinup artist, and you'll just ask yourself about a comic artist that's in the industry today and put their work next to somebody where you hear a lot of people talking about, like, oh man, the storytelling's amazing, but their art might not be there, like the style might not be there. They might not have awesome covers. They might not have, you turn the page and Superman, for example, standing there with his chest all out. It might look okay, but the storytelling, that's the stuff that resonates deep down inside your viewers. It's what's going to keep them coming back looking at your stuff. Hopefully, is that they look at it and they're like, yeah, you're pulling on something other than the eyes. You're getting deep down inside of them there. So anyway, with all that, I realize we're going a little bit further than I had anticipated in the beginning. But so if I put this on there's a couple things. One of the rules that you can do with I guess we'll say drawing in general. Which layer's he on? He's there. Is you're going to start pulling on certain things, right? Like I just said, you want people to feel things. This is a superhero, okay? So I'm going to put him over here. He's the, his eye should probably be right in there, around there. I'll adjust it as we go, but he's the intimidating force here. You got a couple things you can do. If somebody's the intimidator, the guy that's in charge, the woman that's in charge, they usually appear bigger than everybody else. They're always looking down at people. Okay, so this perspective here that I have might have to change a bit because I'm stuck with two problems. One you already saw, where if this was a proper perspective, the lady, she would probably be way up here and they'd be looking at each other. And that looks really cool. He's in the foreground, she's in there. That's like a standard shot. But if he's looking down at her, her head should be like here, and she's kind of looking up at him, and he's all in shadow, looking menacing, right? Which still works. The only problem is that look how small she got, right? So we're going to have to basically make her head almost like that. And that means we're going to have something pretty big in the foreground. And as you can see, if we look down at the next panel, you can see what I'm talking about. There's her head staring off into the distance. Everything's pointing towards him. These bars that are coming up here, they're helping frame all of this. This is the whole point. Even the shadows of him fading away there are all still pointing at him. That's the point. That's where this was going. I don't want to duplicate shots here. I want to have something fresh, something fun. So those are just problems that I have at this level. I'm not going to get into how I solve them or where I'm going to end up with this. The video is getting a little too long and it's a little bit different. I just wanted to show how to get this set up. So these are the things that I'm thinking of. After this stage, the next one I'd put over top of this guy here is another layer. I would turn him to blue, draw over top of him with tighter anatomy. I guess this would be the stage where you'd put your tight pencils, and then I would go into inks. And that's where let's just say, the last thing I'll wrap up here with you guys, just say this was it. This is everything I needed. I have my rough there. I lower the opacity again to my roughs just so I can see when I'm inking it. Then I click into panel 1, or whatever panel this is. What panel is that? 1, 2, 3. Go into panel 3, make a new layer. I might label it. Usually I get a little sloppy and I just go, okay. I go and I grab my Maru tool. Usually my brush setting is around 1. Or 1.3 I've been getting into, and then I go in there and I just start inking, and that's it. Okay, so hopefully this helped you guys out, thinking a little bit different in case you're having a little bit of struggle getting your pages set up and all that good stuff. And if there's anything else you guys wanted me to tackle or go into next, just leave a comment below. Appreciate it. So like usual, keep reading comics, keep making comics. I'll talk to you guys soon, and take care. Bye.